Degrees of Science is a series of one-on-one conversations that dive into the exciting, insightful, informative, and entertaining world of weather, science, climate, STEM education, and how it affects you. In this week's episode of Degrees of Science, we sit down and talk one-on-one with Michaela McCown, an assistant professor of environmental science at McLennan Community College. She's also the chair for the City of Waco's Sustainable Resource Practices Advisory Board, and in her free time, she trains for the Ironman. In our conversation, we talk about why sustainability is so important and some practical ways to be more sustainable in our everyday lives. Here's a peek into our conversation. Hey everybody, I'm here with Michaela McCown and we are talking all about sustainability today. We're talking a lot about sustainability because it really ties into everything that we do, and I know weather and sustainability really do coincide a lot, and so that's kind of why I wanted to chit chat with you here on this platform and talk more about what that is. So thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Michaela, you have a lot of titles and a lot of job responsibilities. Tell me a little bit about all of those and kind of what that means for you in your everyday life.
Yeah, so for my job, I work at MCC. I teach environmental science. So that's kind of what I do for a living, is revolving around sustainability on a daily basis. I also serve as the chair for the City of Waco's Sustainable Resource Practices Advisory Board.
A mouthful.
Yes, it is. It's quite the mouthful. We abbreviate and just call it the Sustainability Board sometimes. And then I also serve on the board of directors for the Texas Land Conservancy, and then also for the Sustainability Committee for MCC. So I'm definitely involved in many different facets of life and sustainability.
Yeah. And then in your free time, I know you said you were doing a little bit of swimming too.
Yes, yeah. So I'm training for the Ironman and actually working with the race director to improve some sustainability aspects of that race as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a great experience.
So let me ask you about that a little bit. So I know we'll talk a lot about what sustainability is and just the importance of that, but with the Ironman, how are you working on improving sustainability with that race?
Yeah, great question. So I did the half Ironman in Waco last year, and I've served as a volunteer and recruit a lot of my students every year to help keep Waco beautiful, reduce waste from the race course, and try and divert as much as possible from the landfill and recycle it. And being a volunteer as well as an athlete last year, I really noticed how much trash was on the course and the impact that this event was having on our community. And it was a little embarrassing being an athlete, just kind of seeing what was going on, and really inspired me to try and do more for future races. And
that race brings in a lot of people from a lot of different places in the U.S., really?
Yes,
yeah.
People from all over the globe come in for that race, and it's a huge economic benefit for our community, but it also has this environmental impact. And so the current race director, Nancy Goodnight, is really passionate about sustainability as well. And so along with the City of Waco and Keep Waco Beautiful, we've formed a collaborative partnership to try and improve different aspects of the race in terms of sustainability.
That's great.
So we're really encouraging athletes to try and think about, the waste that they produce on race day and making sure that that gets disposed of properly. We're implementing lots of recycling all across the course and downtown. We're going to have water stations in the spectator area so people can just bring like refillable water bottles rather than having to buy single-use ones.
Mm-hmm. And people carry those all the time now.
Yeah,
so
yeah, we're trying to make it easy on people. We'll have our kind of downtown area, the spectator area, and the finish line will be powered by renewable energy.
Cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different initiatives to try and make this whole event more sustainable and benefit our community as well as the river and these resources that we require as athletes.
Yes, and being good stewards of the resources that we have here available, like the river.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, you mentioned you guys are going to be putting in recycling stations and water bottle refill stations. I know a lot of times when people think about sustainability, they think, oh, recycling, being green, doing those kinds of things. But sustainability is so much more than that. And I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about just what is sustainability and why is it so important in our everyday lives?
Yeah, great question. So sustainability at its core is all about using resources in a way that it allows for future generations to use those same resources. So when we look at our resource consumption now, we're doing so in a way that's going to be detrimental to future generations, whether that's water consumption or air quality. You know, we're basically causing air quality to decline that it's already harming humans. And so sustainability comes back to how do we reduce our impact on the planet? How do we be better stewards of resources so that way we can continue using them hundreds, thousands of years down the road? And so what that looks like for individuals might be a little bit different based on, you know, where you are in life and what resources you use. You probably have heard the 3 R's, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yes.
And it really comes back to that. So first and foremost, how can you reduce your use of some type of resource? So for example, how can you maybe when you go to the grocery store, do you need a bag, right? If you're just getting 2 items, can you carry those out? If you don't even grab a bag, that's reducing the need for that resource. So that is going to allow that resource to kind of have a longer life cycle. So let's say you do need a bag, because usually when I go to the store, I might go in for one thing and I come out with like 10.
Can't carry it all.
Yeah, I can't quite carry it all. So I bring reusable bags, and then on the rare occasion that I forget my reusable bags, if I have to get a grocery sack that's single use, I'll figure out how can I recycle it or reuse it. So can I use it as a little waste bin container, or can I use it to take you know, my stuff to work for lunch? So how can I put that bag to use again? So that's that reuse and recycle component.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the 3 R's, the reduce, reuse, recycle, because recycle is actually the last of the 3 steps. And so I think when people sometimes think about it, they think, oh, that's the first step, I'll recycle it, it's out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But really it's the impacts before we get to that recycling stage that can make the most difference.
Exactly, and recycling isn't 100% efficient, particularly when we're looking at the plastic recycling market now. And so a lot of the other plastics end up going to the landfill.
And
I
didn't
so
know that.
Yeah, so even kind of knowing those components, and when you look at a plastic water bottle, most of those aren't made from recycled plastic. Most plastic that we are recycling goes into creating other items like clothing or the plastic benches that you see on playgrounds. So they kind of go into a completely different purpose. And so there's still virgin plastic being made to create those water bottles, you know, that you're pulling off the shelf. So just kind of being aware of those things is really important. And again, thinking, all right, how can I reduce my use of these, you know, reuse them if I've purchased them or obtained them, and then recycle them.
Yeah. Well, and I know it's so important, you know, in everyday life just to do those steps. And we kind of talked a little bit before too on just the impacts that it's having on our globe as a whole too. And I know we can talk about extreme weather, and I think it all ties back to what we do, the day-to-day use that we put, the strain on the earth. And so being good stewards of the earth and having that sustainability mindset can help limit some of those extreme weather things that we see happening in the world, just because of the emissions that we're putting out there and the resources that we are fast depleting, just like water resources that are available to us. I know that's a big issue in a lot of other countries, and I know we can go off on this for days, but it's kind of out of sight, out of mind too when we go to the tap and we just turn it on and we have it right there available. Or we just go and we flush the toilet and it's gone, right? But I know in other countries that they have to walk miles to get their water to have that resource. And so I think that I know just for me at home, when I have that mindset of like, oh, how convenient is this that I have water here to wash the dishes? Let me actually turn that off when I'm not using that, because it is a finite resource on the globe. And so I know water really dictates our weather systems and our weather patterns, and just being a good steward of water is so important to me that I wanted to chit chat with you a little bit about that as well, and kind of how that's being impacted in our community maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And something else about water conservation, you know, a lot of people get discouraged because they're like, okay, well, if I shut off my faucet, you know, while I'm brushing my teeth, like, yeah, I'm only saving a couple gallons. But it adds up. If everybody's making those small little changes, it really does add up and it makes a huge difference. And something about water conservation is when, you know, you're saving water in your home, you're also saving energy, because our water treatment is actually one of the top energy uses in our city.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so it's all tied together. You know, if you are conserving in one area, oftentimes you're helping out in another area. And we are seeing drought issues and water shortages in Texas. Every basin in Texas is over allocated in terms of water rights, except for one. But we're going to start to see a lot of issues in terms of water availability in Texas in the future, like we're seeing in the Colorado River Basin right now. And that's a huge issue. You know, basically right now we're seeing farmers that don't have enough water to water crops. And so that's going to affect the food chain and food shortages for everybody across the U.S. And we're already seeing issues with food prices from inflation. And so if we start to see other shortages due to water availability, that really does affect everybody.
Because that really does. I know sustainability has kind of three pillars, you know, your economic, your environmental, and your people resources. And so that you just hit the nail on the head, right? You said farmers don't have it, so its prices go up. So that's, you know, impact to the environment, impact to our people, and impact to our economy as well. So that's just an example. I think what you're saying is how it affects every single thing that we do and need.
Yeah, and you know, Waco is in a pretty good scenario in terms of water availability. We have a large water supply for our population, but a lot of other cities in Texas are not that way. And a lot of cities rely very heavily on groundwater, and what we're seeing across the state is groundwater mining, which is basically where we're pulling out so much groundwater that it's never going to replenish. And so we're seeing wells are drying up across the state, so a lot of people in rural areas no longer have access to water. And that groundwater flow in certain places affect our surface water flow. And so we're actually seeing streams and rivers are starting to dry up, and that affects wildlife, that affects recreation, that affects surface water drinking sources. So all of it is interrelated and connected, and it's important to remember those connections and realize how much of an impact we can have as an individual.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to talk with you on this platform, because I think it is so important that people recognize what sustainability is and how it applies to their lives too. And you know, what are some, I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about turning the faucet off or reduce, recycle. What are some other things that people could do, you know, quickly in their everyday lives that would make a small change but would have a big impact over the long term? Yeah,
so I get that question a lot, and there's no silver bullet, I hate to say. It really does depend on every individual and kind of what their life looks like.
Sure.
Again, it comes back to implementing those 3 R's in your own life. So are you able to carpool? Can you bike to work? Can you combine errands so you're making a single trip instead of multiple trips? Can you switch your energy plan on your house to renewable energy? That's an option. I think some of the biggest things are being mindful of the 3 R's and how that might apply to your own life, sharing sustainability with other people, talking about it more, and also advocating for change at multiple different levels. So how can we talk, you know, with our local government and our broader government about, you know, these are changes that we want to see for our health, you know, for our environment and for economic stability for the future. Because like you mentioned, these things are all interrelated, and it's really important that we be thinking about these things now.
Definitely.
And something else is a lot of people do get frustrated because there are a lot of environmental problems, and it can get a little depressing at times, and you might think, oh, I'm not really doing that much as an individual. But if you think about the impact that you have over your life by not using plastic straws, that's a lot of plastic over your life. And if multiple people decide to do that, that's even greater of an impact. And so if we all do these small little actions on a daily basis, collectively we can have a really large impact, and that's really hopeful.
And you mentioned a couple of different things that you're involved in and you're teaching at MCC. And so what are some of the things here in the community that are going on with sustainability, just creating some of those changes?
Yeah, so we actually have a lot going on. So the Waco Sustainability Network is kind of a newly formed group to kind of help connect people to sustainability.
And you helped head that up, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah,
okay.
It was a couple of different folks that are really passionate about sustainability and wanted to say, hey, let's put our minds together, and no use in reinventing the wheel. Let's share ideas and resources. So there's always stuff going on through the network. Keep Waco Beautiful is always very consistent in doing cleanups and hosting different events to help beautify our community and help reduce waste and improve recycling. We have a monthly, won't use the full word this time, but sustainability board meetings with the City of Waco. So those are open to the public.
And those are monthly?
They're monthly,
okay.
Yeah. And it's just a normal kind of board, like all the other boards and commissions for City of Waco, and it's citizen-led, and so oftentimes we have positions available and need people to fill those positions. So being willing to volunteer your time on one of those boards, or there's many other boards for the city, is really valuable, or just coming to those meetings and providing input are all extremely valuable.
Awesome. Well, Michaela, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on to this platform and talking a little bit more about sustainability. I know we wanted to kind of talk about it as a whole, and I know we're going to hear and see great things from you that are continuing to happen in our community, and I want to wish you the best of luck on your Ironman. When is that again?
October.
So that's coming up so soon.
It is, yep.
Well, perfect. Well, is there anything else you want to kind of wrap up with about sustainability for today?
No, I'd just like to say that we do have a lot of positive movement in our community, and every community has room for growth, but we have seen a lot of wonderful things that have implemented in Waco that have really made Waco a great place to live. And so I hope that everybody in our community can continue partnering with us to help improve sustainability in Waco even more than where we are today.
And hopefully this conversation kind of sheds a light on what you guys are doing and what the community is doing and how we can all make an impact for not our community, but for really the globe too.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and I can't wait to talk with you again.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next time.